Hello and welcome to Arise News. You're watching the Global Business Report. I am Rotis Odiri coming to you live from the commercial capital of Nigeria, Lagos. We continue with our exclusive coverage of the aftermath of the NSARS protest and the violence that occurred at the hands of military officials that invaded the Lekki toll and shot at peaceful protesters. In an exclusive interview with Arise TV, Lagos Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu spoke to the morning show about a range of issues springing from the fallout of the violence at the peaceful NSARS protest at the Lekki toll in Lagos, Nigeria, which caused a tragic loss of life and damage to property. Following the widespread damage to Lagos state property by hoodlums, the governor was asked about creating employment opportunities in Lagos in order to reduce the amount of idle youth and consequently violence and damage to property. Let's take a listen.
You know, Lagos, it's not about the state where you stop, activity for a long time. This is a state that runs 24/7, as it were, and we want that's what we know our Lagos for, and that's what we need to quickly get our Lagos back into, right? And the second question around job creation, like you see, post-COVID, we've set out a whole lot of machinery as a state directly to be able to employ and take a lot of our youth. About 2 weeks ago, we had interventions, direct, interventions from our Lagos Employment Trust Fund in the tourism sector. We set up what we call hubs, both fashion hubs, to be able to take our teeming youths, off the street. There are deliberate plans that we've set up in the 2021 budget and also in the revised 2020 budget to be able to take a lot more people, employed. At our state level, we might not have all of the wherewithal to employ so much people, but we just need to create the enabling environment for small businesses, people that are employing 4, 5, 10 people, to be able to pick up those numbers, because those are the ones that are worst hit from February, March, when the COVID incident started. So part of the things that we're doing, we're giving soft loans. We're giving grants to small businesses. We're reducing their interest on the loans that we've given to them. We're doing a lot of internship program. We just set up on our website, on Tuesday, last week, Thursday, on our website, an internship program to take about 4,000 kids, and we're putting them in placement in various organizations for the next 6 months, and the state government will be paying. So there's a plan that we have that will have taken or will have been able to attract about 20 to 30,000 direct, jobs creation for our kids, for our youth, in this month of in this month of October. But where we are now, we need to reset. We need to reset the button again and see how we're able to do all of these things going forward. But like I said, government in itself, it's not the full employer of labor. Government is an enabler for the private sector to truly, really employ and to have the opportunity to bring kids into their employment. One of the things that we're able to get the real organized private sector to do, especially during the pandemic, was to have the conversations with them that no job losses. Yes, you might have reduced retained earnings in terms of your profitability, but I spoke to almost all the CEOs of our big blue chip companies, and they gave me the assurances that they will not retrench or reduce anybody from their employment. And that has been the case. And we did very happy and grateful for that. But our concern really are with the small businesses who are the employers of 5, 4 people who do not have the shock, the ability to be able to retain the shock of the COVID era. So they're the ones that we're opening up these grants for. We've set up a scheme where, for example, in partnership with First Bank, we set up a 5 billion, grant for small schools, small secondary schools and primary schools that are run by the private sector. People that couldn't get kids coming to pay for school fees and all of it. We set up that 5 billion grant. We set up a tourism grant for about 1 billion, just to also kick off that tourism and entertainment industry. These were some of the things that were set up in September and October, and before the end of the year, that were rolled out. But we go back, right, and we do a reset button so that we can have an opportunity for a lot of these youths, to be off the street.
Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu speaking to the Arise News morning show crew about job creation opportunities to try to reduce idle youth and also the aftermath of these violent occurrences that we've seen following the NSAR's protests and the shootings that occurred there. Arise business analyst Bode Ososumi responded to the aftermath of the violence at the Lekki toll. Let's take a listen.
Our thoughts are with the wounded and families of those that have lost loved ones in these protests, even as the protests are now grabbing global headlines. Although many have said the effort still appears leaderless, but we have to agree that there are countless reasons to ask for change. The rising food or gasoline prices, the systemic corruption, the ongoing violence across the country. And of course, we've seen all kinds of instances of terrorism, either from Islamist militants, banditry, and kidnappings. And while there have been protests before and hashtags in the past, the level of frustration may have turned into lethargy for some, but for others, it's become something just waiting to kick off into something bigger, which may be why we're seeing this very fast momentum as far as this cry for change is concerned. The economic toll is obviously going to be considerable. Lagos, if it were a country, will be the 5th largest economy in Africa, and houses headquarters of most conglomerates and commercial banks. The GDP of Lagos is $33 billion. That's about 10% of the nation's GDP, with a population of about 18 million people and a labor force of 6.9 million. Unemployed and underemployed in Lagos could be over 30%. So we're talking of over 3 million to 4 million youths who don't have anything doing or are engaged in things that they would like to improve themselves on. So according to the Lagos Chamber of Commerce, as the LCCI, what they're also saying is that Nigeria has lost more than 700 billion naira in economic value since the NSARS protests started 14 days ago. Beyond Lagos, the sensitive oil-rich Niger Delta region is being closely watched by analysts for any deterioration in the security situation. I suspect we may be seeing a 0.5% hit to the country's GDP growth in the quarter, in the best case, assuming we do not see a dramatic escalation that impacts the oil sector.
The matter of hoodlums, miscreants, and violence also continues to be a talking point in the aftermath of what we've seen. Bode Ososumi, Arise business analyst in the UK, also spoke to that narrative as well about the hoodlums hijacking the protest.
Indeed, you could be right to say that disaffected troublemakers are hijacking the unrest, but the protests. But when you push people too far into despair, they do not really care. And we just have to hope that the process evolves as it can into a more organized demand for change. I observed the sympathetic reactions of world leaders, Biden, for example, calling for government to engage in good faith dialogue with civil society and so on. I suspect the time for dialogue has passed. The government is not naive or completely ignorant of the issues. What is needed now is, I think, is action, not dialogue and fine speeches. And also, there is need for fast, far-reaching changes. Buhari, if he wants his government to survive, he needs to make radical changes, and he has to fire his team or trash plans that are not working, that do not deliver, and commit immediately to a much more radical and faster trajectory of change. Nigeria is not the US or Europe. We cannot survive on 2% GDP growth, and the poverty rate needs to come down drastically. And every Nigerian needs to be guaranteed decent livelihood, welfare support, basic affordable education, electricity, and health services. The police needs to be overhauled. A huge overhaul is needed there that cannot be pushed, and this overhaul can be pushed by the current leadership, and it has to also be done in an aggressive time frame. I've never believed foreign interests care for Nigeria. They're too busy trying to address their own issues and always have their own agenda. But what is clear is that there is a readiness to embrace and support a truly transformational agenda that is people-centered. It is regrettable that movements like this come with a cost. Mobs and gangsters can be destructive and troublemakers will gain ground. But I think it's okay. The greater disaster is if the president does not respond with the vigor and the urgency that the situation demands.
All right, and Bode Oshosumi, Arise business analyst, also spoke about lessons, if any, from the 2011 Arab Spring, and if there are any parallels with what we've seen from the NSAR's protests. Take a listen.
I see three main lessons that we can learn from looking at the Arab Spring, particularly in the context of what's going on in Nigeria. The first lesson is that toppling the head of a regime does not mean that the political regime has fallen, not that we are near toppling this regime. But even if you do that, it doesn't mean you have solved the problem. Protesters understood the lesson that the regime is found not only in the head of the state, but rather in the rules that govern the political sphere. So what you really want to change is a system, an order, not just a few persons. Secondly, the other lesson about violence, particularly with respect to protest, violence has to give way to peaceful, intelligent action. Violence can be the fastest way also to end any hope for democratic change. Even when armed groups manage to bring down the regime, their presence endangers the more constructive transitional phase of change afterwards, as we have seen it in Libya. And finally, maybe the most important lesson is that the call for change in the regime goes beyond electoral democracy or expression of deep frustration. It has to extend to deep socioeconomic reforms. Iraq and Lebanon show this clearly. Here we saw relatively free and fair elections, but that only served to reinforce corrupt sectarian regimes. So to begin to dance because regimes are toppled, not that Nigeria is at this stage, can often be declaring a premature victory. Change, which is transformational, requires leadership, it requires time and some intelligent navigation to achieve a desired goal. And it doesn't happen accidentally and not because people want it badly, but this could trigger such a change.
Watching the Global Business Report on Arise News. We'll have much more for you after the break. Do stay tuned. You're watching the Global Business Report here on Arise News. Just listened to Bode Oshosumi, who was talking a lot about the aftermath of the issues that we saw coming on the back of the NSAR's protests and, of course, the violence that resulted from the protests, lessons to be learned from the Arab Spring uprising, and also, crucially, what to do about the hoodlums and miscreants and the issues revolving violence that they've been causing, and of course, what kind of job opportunities that can be provided to them. Also, we heard from the Lagos State Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, who spoke exclusively to the morning show crew, and he talked, of course, about the different mechanisms that Lagos State had put in place in order to provide opportunities for those youth, because every single time there is, with respect to protests and issues around movements around the country, these individuals seem to pop up and hijack some of these movements. So a number of issues there that were touched upon by Governor of Lagos State Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and also Arise business correspondent, business analyst Bode Oshosumi. Now, here's a tweet talking about the need for drones, and this is a random tweet that we saw on Twitter. We need more drones in the air. A lot more drones in the air. So we're going to be talking about that now, and how drones back up a statement here from the managing director of the Access Bank Group, Herbert Wigwe. Now, this is, of course, with respect to the news that suggested that there were soldiers perched on the Access Bank building overlooking the toll. So here's what he said. This is to inform us all that there are no third-party persons in any of our locations: Access Towers, Contact Center, Oniru Lekki 1 branch, and the PGD Place. In other words, no soldier or soldiers entered our premises, let alone gained any entrance to the 14th floor. I have triple confirmed the information, and we currently have a detachment of mobile police officers in both the towers and PGD Place. The code continues. It says, however, there's a new building a block away from PGD that looks like ours, just completed, overlooking the toll gate, which is the most probable place these soldiers may have occupied. So we've got a bit, some footage with respect to what the managing director was talking about. So yes, let's stick here for a moment now. So this is, again, if you remember the tweet we just saw a few seconds ago talking about we need more drones. That was just a random person on Twitter. Here's the importance as to why. So here's what the managing director was talking about. Circled there and in the middle of those two buildings is the Access Bank towers. And that's, of course, where he was refuting the news that soldiers were perched on those towers overlooking protesters. So as you can see, that's the Access Bank towers there at Oniru. Now, to the right, circled in green, is a building that's a block away. That could be the PGD, the other building that he's talking about that was recently completed. However, to the left of the building, at the yellow, being pointed to with the yellow arrows is, I think that's most likely what he's referring to. That's a just completed building that also overlooks the Lekki toll. And so as you can see, based on this drone footage, it pretty much backs up what he's talking about, to where people could have confused the Access Bank building with the other two. We've actually got live footage. Let's take a look at some of the footage from the drones this actually was from regular citizen, Nigerian citizen, that was taking a look. Let's take a look at some of this footage now. So we're looking at, this is of course looking at some of the aftermath of the damage. You can see the building at the bottom there covered in soot. And this is coming from behind the Oriental Hotel on the Victoria Island side of the toll. And so this is just taken just yesterday. This is in broad daylight. And now you can see the buildings up above, the Access Bank building, and then the other two buildings that are parallel to it. There's a bit of cleanup. There's not much activity. In fact, no activity going there. It's completely cleared of people. But you can see soot, smoke, some spilled liquids on the ground there. Those are the two buildings. Again, this is the importance of drones, right? Because now you're getting an overview of the city, of the area. Tokunbo Yetunji, remember yesterday, who was trailing the rapid response squad from the police. He was trailing them. They were doing the best they could with respect to talking to as many community folks as possible, but their efforts could have been widely expanded if they had used drones. So now we're looking at more damage now. Here, the drone is, this is Lekki Phase 1 in Lagos, Nigeria. It's zooming in on the gates. These gates are the entrance to Admiralty Way. Admiralty Way, of course, takes you into Lekki Phase 1. You can see that the gates are completely destroyed, completely taken off the hinges and destroyed and pulled off from the hinges right there, which shows, again, the aftermath of the damage, the scale of the damage that we've seen in the aftermath of the protest. Now, here's GTB, Guaranteed Trust Bank. You can see there in this image, now it's focusing on the, you can see on the right-hand side of the building, the black suit. This is, of course, from the fire that engulfed these buildings. Again, due to hoodlums that were setting fire to private property. And so again, this is the advantage of having drone footage, of being able to look at an aerial view of different properties. Here we have a mall. This is still on Admiralty Way in Lekki Phase 1 in Lagos. Here the drone is going to be zooming in on the broken glass. There it is. The blue patches you're seeing at the bottom there is shattered glass from a number of, from the businesses that were there that were hit by those hoodlums in the aftermath of the violence that spread across the city. So there are a lot of property damage that we're seeing. And there at the top, you can see a number of gentlemen at an ATM. One of those ATMs was also damaged as well. So again, very, very important that you have drone footage to cover all this. You're watching the Global Business Report here on Arise News. We are still focused on the aftermath. There's a tweet from Hillary Clinton to call in on President Buhari to end the killings and also to respond to the nation. Also, there's a big debate tonight, Vice President Joe Biden and Donald Trump. He also put out a statement as well, referring to the violence and calling for peace and calm and for the authorities to address what has been taking place. So again, there's some ramifications with foreign investment where you see this kind of concern coming from the international community and these high-profile individuals. These high-profile individuals in the make of course, Vice President Joe Biden and President Donald Trump. Interestingly enough, President Trump did actually, in the debate that's taking place today, he did say he wanted foreign policy to be part of the issues that he discusses with Joe Biden. I'm not sure if that's going to take place, but we'll see if that happens. If foreign policy was to come up, and the discussion of the United States being the leader when it comes to security issues, it is very possible, very likely that Nigeria, what happened in the aftermath of the NSARS protests, could become a debate topic between both candidates. It's being debated as to whether or not foreign policy will be added to that. But again, if you look at the tweets from former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and former Vice President Joe Biden, Democratic candidate for presidency here. Again, there it is. I'm calling on President Buhari and the Nigerian army to stop the killings of young NSARS protesters, and she's part of that. So again, with the amount of coverage that this is bringing to the international community, it does put pressure on the authorities here to be able to arrest the situation. Let's go back to the drone footage again. There's the discussions also about how much damage has been done and what it's going to cost to rebuild. Hopefully, in a few minutes, actually, we're going to be speaking with an executive at the North Court, a real estate firm. We'll be talking about real estate and also the damage to a Circle Mall, a mall in Lekki. But again, it's very important that the authorities utilize technology that can get wide swaths of damage, identify large swaths of damage, and can cover more ground than an individual on the ground in a vehicle. Again, our coverage yesterday, we were speaking to different communities, trailing the Rapid Response Squad, police authorities yesterday. They were going through different parts of the state, talking to communities, talking about, telling them to please stay calm, stay indoors, and not cause any more damage. If you want to assess the damage, this is definitely a way to go with respect to using tech that can take a wide view of the different amounts of damage to property here. As far as the valuations, it was discussed on the morning show this morning, and the governor of Lagos State, Governor Sanwo-Olu, also alluded to the fact that it's going to be in the billions. You can think of the amount of insurance premiums that are going to be, underwritten for the amount of damage. And this is going to set the nation back. Bode Ososome, Arise business analyst, talked about, I believe he said a 0.2, 0.3, 0.5% hit to GDP. We'll be getting GDP, the third quarter GDP numbers, hopefully in about another 2 or 3 weeks from the Bureau of Statistics. On yesterday, Ozi Okole, he spoke to an individual at the Lekki toll who used to work for a hotel. And he said he had been out of work since March due to the lockdowns caused by the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. So if you layer the damage that's caused to employment and add to the costs of what it's going to cost to rebuild the damage that you're looking at right now from this drone footage, then it tells you that the nation is in a deeper hole. This is, again, Lagos State, the commercial capital of Nigeria. So the amount of damage that's being done here, that, in fact, speaking of the tolls and damage, before even looking at the burnt properties, the Lekki toll that you're looking at now with this drone footage has lost an estimated 234 million naira. That's about $700,000. And that damage is, or rather, that loss has just toll revenue. That's the toll revenue that's been lost over the last 13, 14 days. That doesn't even doesn't even account for the damage to property, the burnt stalls, and then the employees who have been off work now and not being paid, the layoffs. The scale of damage is quite massive, and so it's going to take quite a bit of time in order for this to be put back together. Again, that's GTB Bank again. That's a private sector player, an employer of labor. Pretty much, it's a lot to take into account. But then the main point here is technology, drones, being able to take a wide view of everything, and in order to solve these problems. So we'll still keep our eye on the ball. There's much more for you after the break. We'll be talking to a real estate executive about Circle Mall. More damage, unfortunately, in the aftermath of the NSARS process and the violence. It's a Global Business Report on the Rise News. Do stay tuned. Welcome back to the Global Business Report on Arise News. We're still following the aftermath of the damage to property with respect to the violence following the NSAR's protests, or rather the shooting at the hands of military officials that advanced to the Lekki toll where the protesters were peacefully protesting. And we've been looking at drone footage of damage to private property. We continue the conversation now looking at real estate. Circle Mall at Jakonde in Lekki was just, decimated with respect to the damage that took place at the hands of hoodlums. So we want to have a conversation from a real estate perspective with Ayo Ibaru, who is the COO and Director of Research at North Court. Putting up some of this footage here where we're looking at some of the damage to Circle Mall. So we're looking at, individuals. Look at that gentleman in the blue shirt carrying a fan out of the Circle Mall at Jakonde in Lekki. You can see people, this is cell phone footage from somebody who was at a higher floor. Individuals taking shopping carts and just looting the entire mall. So, and this is not the first time, unfortunately, that Circle Mall has witnessed this. There's individuals bringing out material there. Look at them. And I understand that they were hawking some of these materials or auctioning them off. It's understood a refrigerator that's worth thousands of naira was sold off for about 5,000–6,000 naira. You can see that guy carrying a chair. That guy's carrying a rug or a carpet. The next individual, it was a free-for-all at the Circle Mall. And so we want to talk about the damage. We want to talk about what could be done to rebuild, what investors, foreign investors would make of all this. Ayo Ibaru, Chief Operating Officer, Director of Research at North Court, is with us in our Abuja studio. Ayo, good morning to you. Thanks for joining us on the program. So, you're seeing the footage there, Ayo. Kicking off, can you put a naira value to, so there's ShopRite, unfortunately. And ShopRite was in the news. We covered it when they were divesting from their holdings in Nigeria. But, Ayo, what naira value can you put to the damage we're seeing here?
So good morning, Rotos. Thanks so much for having me here. First of all, our condolences go out to everyone who has lost someone, who has experienced hurt in one way or the other. There's really no way, that can be compensated for. Now, in terms of naira value lost, that's a very difficult calculation to make. The reason is until we meet each of the shop owners, there's really no way we can find out. Some have lost as much as 50 million, some have lost as much as 100 million. And then there's also the case of the credibility that they have lost, even with their foreign investors. I know you're going to get into that question, but I'm thinking, we can just get into that now. We have 3 phases of this situation. We have the short term, in which you will have major disruptions, similar to what we saw at the xenophobic attacks, compounded by the COVID nightmare we've had to endure for the last 6 to 8 months. And then in the midterm, we will see some reconstruction, we will see some rebuilding. But then in the long term, we will now want to see major structural, social, and economic reforms. And serious questions have to be answered, and they have to be answered quickly. Yes, we can talk about money lost. Yes, we can talk about real estate that has been destroyed. It's my industry, that's what I will do. But then we need to answer the valid question, which is this: what is the value of the Nigerian life?
Thank you so much for that, Ayo. And I'm glad you mentioned the xenophobic attacks that occurred. Was, exactly. So, and this same mall, I believe also the mall, the Novare Mall at Shangotedo as well, were both hit by looting and so on and so forth. So between that time, which was just last year, and now, these losses, did they not begin to pile up and worry foreign investors when you've now got this following that incident?
Okay, so the investments in emerging markets or frontier markets, as some people like to refer to Nigeria as, it's very simple. It's always a risk. But this level of destruction, this level of carnage, this level of absence of security forces will make prosecuting the argument for investing in Nigeria's retail sector much harder than it already is. Because I've spoken with a few of these developers, a few of these players in the investor market. And many of them are saying, look, Ayo, even 18 months, even 36 months, we're still seeing certain things like this on a consistent basis. We're out.
Wow.
We're out because you can only invest you can only invest so much. You can only invest so much in an environment. I mean, what gives? West Africa doesn't, I mean, Ghana doesn't do this. Other countries don't do this. So at some point in time, once we are done recovering, if we can, from the short-term disruptions, and then we're able to get some rebuilding ongoing, we need to have a concrete security plan. We need to have a concrete arrangement around financing, around protection of assets, around government involvement in ensuring that investors don't regret coming into Nigeria. We have to do something.
Excellent. Thank you for mentioning that. Excellent point. So, if on the security side of things, if they were to, okay, so they rebuild, they try to restock, get the inventory back in, and beef up security. That cost, the added cost of beefing up your security at a site like this, or any other site, if you were to build a shopping mall, does that now flow down into the added cost? Does that now flow down to retailers as far as the cost of the items that you're stocking, or how much you charge in rents to businesses that want to put shops there? Does that make things more expensive? Is basically what I'm asking.
Oh, you raise a very valid point, and we will see that in the short term. At least for the next 3 to 6 months, you're going to see rent discussions revisited. You're going to see prices move in certain degrees or in certain directions that we weren't expecting. Those are expected in the short term. I mean, any economist, any investment analyst will tell you these things. Right, so we can expect that. By the end of the day, what is the purchasing power of the average Nigerian? You can only raise your prices so much. If it's too expensive, I won't buy, or I will look for a cheaper alternative. It's that simple. It's rational behavior, classic economics.
That's
what's going to happen.
Perfect, and I'm glad you mentioned that again, because we're seeing that in the breweries sector with the competition that's taking place between the brewers and, of course, the purchasing power of the average Nigerian. Now, speaking of purchasing power, now, if we're getting into income now, there was a tweet talking about whether the investors, or rather the Circle Mall, regrets building in that area because, I just have to say, Jakande, unfortunately, is surrounded by, the income disparity is quite glaring in that area. And so it's been said that any opportunity that the individuals in the environs have, they will hit that mall. I just want to get your perspective. You're a developer, you're in this space. Did they make a mistake in situating their location there? Do they move? What happens next? And what's your take of the area?
So before I answer your question, let me ask you a question. So what do I say to Novare? Novare doesn't have the same situational analysis that the Circle Mall project would have. It will bring out if you had done the same analysis, situational analysis for Novare, what you will find is that it's an okay environment. Middle to upper class live around there. But when the problem came, when the problem came, there was nothing anybody could do. You see, because you can't, I'm looking for the best way to say this. You can't blame someone for being poor. That's why we have governments. Now, to answer your question, every situational analysis, every feasibility and viability study will show these things. But investment is always a risk. And the hope is that as people trust governments to take the right decisions, they will take the risk to bring their money in. But then we have to make sure that for every property investment that you make, I mean, I do research, I do advisory on a very regular basis. And yes, we will look into all these things. And yes, we will present our well-researched reports. And yes, you will read it. But then when you come in and one of the pieces move that you don't have any control over, what are you going to do? I can tell you categorically, God forbid, if this thing had happened in Lekki Palms, the same thing would have happened. The same people would have come in and would have looted. Because it happened in Novare, it happened in Jakande. If you look, okay, so since we're talking about tweets now, Ikeja City Mall, they quickly came out, was it 2 days ago, and said, look, we are not owned by a certain individual. Because they knew, it's not about where you are. If it is clear that the state doesn't have security to provide, if it is clear that the state cannot provide security for investment into the real estate market, there will be questions. There will be questions now.
Gotcha. Now
that's the only way I can say it. Sorry, I'm not my usual happy-go-lucky self.
It's a serious situation, and you're passionate. It's your sector, and I understand. I know you know about the damage it's going to cause. We're focusing on the Circle Mall. But I also have to add that, you know, the mall at Surulere was also looted. Spa, which is owned by the Dutch, they put out a tweet because they said they were looted. So this is, it's widespread, Ayo. So, I mean, at some point, is there more focus on the socio-economic issues in trying to, because Governor of Lagos State had exclusive interview with our morning show crew earlier this morning, about 9 a.m.
Yes.
He was asked about...
I watched it.
Thank you. You watched it. So he was asked about providing more jobs for the youth. So many of these retail outlets were hit. So, you know, does that now become the primary focus?
You know, at the end of the day, water always finds its level. You see, we have always made that case for infrastructure, for social welfare, for healthcare, for education. We've always made that case. And if we don't put the energy, if we don't put our backs into these kind of things, we will always have... Look, you're even talking about malls. GTB, all these banks, they were looted. Well, they were destroyed. They were defaced. So that's why, with what I started with, we have to deal with the short-term consequences and disruptions quickly, which I think the government is trying to do. How well they're doing that is the subject of conversation for another day. And then in the midterm, we start to do reconstruction, and then developers have to be given serious assurances. Okay. Pricing has to be dealt with, costs have to be managed, the government has to step in, and then finally, we now sit ourselves down and say, look, if we don't deal with the social and the social infrastructure of Nigeria, of Lagos, of our emerging cities, of all the cities in this country, this is only something that will happen. It's a question of when.
All right, so we're going to take a break in a moment here, Ayo. But when we come back, I want to ask you about insurance. I also want to ask you about whether or not these costs are going to price out individuals, and then whether or not retail is for the average Nigerian or it's for the upper income levels. I really do want us to get into that. So we're speaking, of course, with Ayo Ibaru. He's the Chief Operating Officer and also the Director of Research at North Court, a real estate firm. He's also into development, very well learned in this sector. We're talking about the damage that has been wreaked upon the Lekki Circle Mall, also in Surulere, also Spa, widespread damage. We've been following the aftermath of the hit to business, looked at drone footage and the damage to banks, what it's all going to cost, insurance, and then the added cost of beefed up security and what the government can do to alleviate the situation. We're still following all this. It is the Global Business Report on Arise News. Do stay tuned. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back and continue the conversation. Welcome back to the Global Business Report on Arise News. We've been talking about the destruction to business property across Lagos State. We're focusing on the retail shopping sector with respect to shopping malls. The Circle Mall at Lekki suffered serious damage. Looks like a war zone in the aftermath of heavy looting that was captured on amateur video. Cell phone video showing a number of people carting away goods that are supposed to be sold. And so we've been speaking with Ayo Ibaru, Chief Operating Officer and Director of Research at North Court, talking about the aftermath, what it's going to mean to try to rebuild, and so on and so forth. Ayo is still with us in our Abuja studios. Ayo, thank you for sticking around with us. I want to get to the topic of insurance, Ayo. So I'm making an assumption here that these businesses are insured. If you can confirm that. Also, are we going to see possibly a rise in insurance premiums for them in the aftermath of getting this damage accounted for?
Okay, so while we're on the break, I got some feedback from my research team at the office, and we don't have a full figure yet, but insurance will be in billions. There's really no. Let's not talk too much about that. It's just going to be in billions. Yes.
Wow. Okay, and so definitely, the cost is going to be heavy now. So going forward then, so that means then if Nigeria is considered, or if this raises the risk level for the country, since this is the commercial capital, does that then theoretically mean that you might see a rise in the cost of insurance if somebody was to build a mall in another area?
Okay, so I think that's even the second question. I think the first question is, would they even want to build in the first place? I think the conversations around locating outside Lagos, I think will become more reasonable, because in the old days, if you said you wanted to locate something outside Lagos, people would say, why are you doing that? But right now, that argument, I think, in my view, would be easier to prosecute. So before anyone even thinks about cost of security, cost of insurance, or whatnot, getting past the first question, should we build in Lagos, will be a longer conversation than it used to be in times past.
And, okay, so based on that, Ayo, do other states outside Lagos, as far as competition for these investment dollars coming in for the retail sector, do other states start to look more attractive? Because, I mean, the NSARS protest is not just here. They're also in, river states, in other states, in the Middle Belt and so on. Do other states start to look attractive, or is Lagos still the premier choice for those investment dollars coming in for the retail sector?
So I think Lagos State will look less attractive as it used to be. Less attractive than it used to be. As to the other states outside Lagos, they would have to make a case for themselves, and each investment will be seen, as always, on a case-by-case basis. I think the Lagos State government can still put things in place to ensure investors, developers, that this won't happen again, and again, to try and bring out some good out of all this darkness. This does create an opportunity for redevelopment in terms of gross development value, and then we can now increase the standards, than what we had, in previous times. But I don't think it's a case of other states getting more attractive, because really, gross domestic product, purchasing power, ease of just getting things around in a state is highest in Lagos. Lagos has the port, so that cuts down, logistics, by a significant margin. So in the end, it's not that Lagos, other states get better because Lagos is bad. It's just, Lagos is not as attractive as it used to be, except the government takes a strong action to correct that already solidifying impression in the minds of investors.
Ayo Ibaro, COO, Director of Research at Northcote, thank you so much for your time in coming to talk to us about the aftermath of what's happened at the Circle Mall and other malls across Lagos State. We appreciate your insights. Now, speaking of Circle Mall, we're going to go live there. Ozzy Okoli, who was at the Lekki Toll yesterday, he's there now live. Ozzy, we're just discussing this with a real estate executive a moment ago. What are you seeing now? Is Circle Mall more calm?
Well, peace has returned here, but the kind of peace we're experiencing here is the one with a lot of sadness, based on the fact that everything here is in shambles. You can see the kind of destruction. If you look around, the looting, the damages, these things are running in billions. From our findings, they started looting around 7 yesterday morning, and they continued for a whole while. In fact, to the extent that it took a longer period of time for security operatives to come here, and when they arrived, that was when an amount of peace started coming in. And having looked through this area, it's going to take a very long time to put things in the right perspective. I have someone with me here who is an eyewitness, who saw exactly what happened. In fact, he's a staff of the Circle Mall business center here, who saw everything firsthand, how it started and how it all went. Please, can you talk to us about how this whole thing played itself out yesterday?
Okay, I'm Sunday Manuel. I just started around 7:30 in the morning, where we saw a group of guys. They started coming to the Circle Malls, Before you know it, they came with a weapon. So we started, stealing some items, And before you know it, they started cutting some boys. Some staff were even injured, Before the OPC now came to rescue us. So, and in the very short while, they started putting fire in some shops and all that. And as you can see now, some shops, they are still burning, They are still burning. As you can see, smoke is still coming out for some shops, So that's just it. And we just thank God now that the Nigerian army, they came to rescue us. We just thank God for that. But thank God that there's no life was lost I don't know if they, but some guys were wounded, and they, took a lot of properties and all that, some clothes item, refrigerators, and so many other things, home appliances, everything. So I'm shocked now they've already, finalized them. So I don't know what is going to happen for now. In fact, now I'm talking to you, some of us who have lost our job here now. I don't know. That's what I can see about what happened.
Okay, so you work in the Second Mall?
Exactly, I work here
As what?
as the head of cleaning department.
Okay, so just take us through once more. When they were coming in, what was the impression of the people around here? Because I know there are security operatives around this road, this way, this estate. There are securities all around. How come it took a whole while before this thing was repressed?
What really happened is that those people, they came in large crowd, very large crowd. There's not security they can do about it, because they come with weapon, and the security, they don't have any weapon that they can use to fight them. And you can see some of them jump over the fence and all that. That is how they got entrance into the Second Mall.
What type of weapon?
Like some come with bottle, cutlass, and all this jackknife and all that. So that's just it.
Okay, so thank you so very much for that. What we can see so far are just destructions here. And then we intend to also go inside to have a look at the extent of the damage. And then, thank you, Rotus.
Thank you so much, Ozzy. I actually wanted to find out if how long it'll take to get the Circle Mall to reopen. Is what we can see. We just finished discussing that with our real estate executive. And again, just to emphasize, it's not just the Circle Mall. The mall at Surulere was also looted. Spa, which is Dutch-owned, put out a tweet that they were hit as well. But in all of this, it must be emphasized that each of these businesses said that the damage that they suffered comes way second to the loss of life that we've seen in the aftermath of the violence following the NSAR's protests, which were peaceful, by the way. So each of these businesses has commiserated with those that have lost life, and stated that, look, that's the main importance here. But at the end of the day, they've also suffered lots of damage. So we'll keep following this now in Newsday, which is coming up right after this. It is the Global Business Report. That's going to do it for the show. I'm Rotus Sodiri. Thank you so much for watching. Do stay tuned to Arise News. It's Newsday right after this. Stay tuned.